and welcome back to Watchworthy. I am your co-host, Miss Christy.
It's your boy, Brother Ash.
And we are back with a sports documentary this time around. We're going to be talking about the documentary film Bye Bye Barry. This premiered on Amazon in 2023. Amazon has a lot of sports documentaries, so I was excited to check this one out.
Mr. Shake 'em out their shoes, Barry, the legend. Y'all know I was excited about this. I grew up watching his highlights, so this documentary, man.
I was telling Brother Ash, like, before dating you, I probably would not be sitting here watching a football documentary. But I just love all documentaries.
Miss Christie was like, I don't know a lot about football, but I know that was nice.
Yeah. When watching this documentary, they showed a lot of old clips, obviously, because Barry Sanders, you know, the height of his career was really the 90s, so they had a lot of great footage from back then, and, you know, people still alive today in the documentary to talk about their experiences. Some of those people included former teammates like Calvin Johnson, former rivals like Emmitt Smith. I didn't know about the Lions-Cowboys rival. We're going to get all into it. I learned a lot with this documentary, but I think I was most excited to watch because I did know of the scandal of how he just left at the height of his career and really didn't seem to care, really didn't feel sorry. And
he was a chill dude.
That's pretty boss to me. So I was excited to learn more about that. And then I love how these sports documentaries also have fans in there, because I'm like, why is Eminem in this documentary? But Barry Sanders spent his career in Detroit, so Eminem growing up was probably a huge Barry Sanders fan.
He's still in Detroit.
Yeah.
He ruled Detroit baby, Detroit legend, Barry Sanders. Yeah. Detroit's a great city, though. You gotta give flowers to Detroit.
So much talent.
Motown.
Yeah. I mean, technically Barry wasn't from there, but he was a part of the legacy.
And he still is there.
Yeah.
So that shows his love for Detroit.
Exactly. So, you know, while you watch, while you listen, we want you to think about this question. Have you ever left a job without giving 2 weeks notice like Barry Sanders?
Absolutely.
I actually have never done that before. I don't like confrontation. And maybe that's why Barry did it the way he did.
Which is why you leave without saying something. You just be like,
I don't know. I just like never quit. I was just like, I am taking a leave and never came back.
That's how I did Burger King. I just didn't go in.
Oh my God.
Never seen me again.
So we're going to learn how Barry did it back in the 90s. And Josh is going to kick us off.
So Barry Sanders, the man, the myth, and legend in question, was born July 16th. I think, what's that?
Cancer?
Gemini or Cancer?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe Cancer.
Yeah.
And raised in Kansas with 10 siblings. I feel like all the legends got at least 8 siblings.
Right. I don't know why the documentaries lately have had at least 10 siblings.
I'm concerned I only have 2. He was exposed to sports at a young age and played running back. Running back was one of my favorite positions as a kid. Running backs are super athletic athletes, and you'll see that if you know Barry Sanders. So they always were like super fun to watch. His father was a huge Oklahoma Sooners fan, so he grew up watching football. Barry only got 3 offers.
That's surprising.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, you always think these football legends, they probably had 10 offers, but he only had 3.
And he was always good, but I guess back in the day, like, you know what I'm saying, like, it wasn't as much attention on high school athletes as it was, so maybe he went under the radar for a lot of schools. But he chose to attend Oklahoma State University. That was his father's, like, rival school, because his father was a diehard Sooners fan.
I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, you know anything about college football, you know that's one of the big rivalry games that we get every year. So his dad wasn't really happy that Barry chose to go to Oklahoma State, and he let him know it. Like, he even came out the room when the coach was there and just walked right past the room. Was like, you making the worst decision of your life. Like,
he was so rude to the scout. That was so rude.
That was hilarious, though. His father, because he's like all throughout the documentary, his father was really the one who addressed the media for Barry most of the time, because he was like real outgoing and Barry was quiet. But he was like his biggest cheerleader. He wasn't afraid to talk to the media. And he just like enjoyed the spotlight. Unfortunately, he did die in 2021. So, I mean, not 2021, 2011. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't on the documentary talking, unfortunately. But we
got a lot of great old videos of him.
Yeah, for sure. And they look a lot alike too, which I thought was funny. So even his father, so like being who he was, Barry still didn't like the spotlight, which I thought was hilarious. And even in college, like, he didn't like even want to win the Heisman Award.
Crazy.
Like, he didn't like the press and the publicity he was getting for being how good he was, because he was like
I'm sorry, but that's a red flag because, like, the Heisman is such a big deal. Even I know what the Heisman is, and I'm not a football player or a huge football fan, but, like, that's such, like, a high honor, and for you to just be like, whatever.
Barry was like, I don't give a fuck about that.
He literally did not give a fuck, and I was just like, I don't know. I feel like you could at least show some interest.
So, he won the Heisman in 1988. And then, even at the ceremony, like, he was in Japan playing
he wasn't even at the ceremony.
A game with Oklahoma State. They had some type of, game in Japan, which was dope. Like,
interesting. Yeah, I didn't know they did that back in the 1988.
So, he was on a different time schedule, and I believe he said he woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning just to be on the video for the award ceremony. Yeah. So, he did win. And that was, I think, his senior year or whenever he decided to go to the draft after that. So then he was selected by the Detroit Lions as a third pick in round 1 of the 1989 draft. The same draft as Deion Sanders.
So he was a little above Deion Sanders.
I think Troy Aikman was in that draft. Like, it was a bunch of like.
And there's no relation, right? Deion and Barry?
Nah, not at all.
Sanders.
They was just both like ballers, like at the same time, like. Which is wild. I didn't even realize they was in the same draft for a long time. On draft day, the media couldn't track him down, though. Like we said, Barry wasn't with the bullshit. I remember, though, my brother was a huge, like, college athlete. He went to U of H. He would do the same shit. Like, after games, we would be looking for EJ, like, where is he? Like, we call him. He already back in his dorm room. Like,
wow.
So, like, football is a real big thing. Like, if you're a football fan, you know. So these colleges, these NFL teams, like if you're an introvert, like a lot of this makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think it made Barry uncomfortable in a lot of situations.
But red flag, you just got drafted and you're just hiding from the media. Like, that's the thing though. Do you think athletes owe the media anything? They still talk about that to this day.
They don't. One of my favorite running backs, Marshawn Lynch, was kind of like that too. He didn't like talking to the media.
Yeah.
So Barry said he knew that the people, the media in particular, didn't care about him as a person. They just wanted like what like he could do for them, or like what his personality could do for ratings and stuff.
That was like, wise at his young age.
He didn't really, he wasn't like a wild guy though. He just didn't care to, speak to the media and to be involved with, what was going on in pop culture. At this time in the late 1980s, Detroit was crime-ridden, and it still has its problems. And the Lions hadn't won like a postseason game since 1958.
Jeez.
So before Barry was even born, he'd never even seen this team win a playoff game. So the city was like really, really bad and down on this luck.
They had nothing to really look hopeful for. Yeah.
And Barry was like the star in the night sky. You know what I'm saying? Like this kid from from Kansas by way of Oklahoma State. Super explosive, super, he's the type of guy, like, if you know he's coming to your city to play football, you're buying tickets.
But don't you think that's a little wild card to, like, bet your whole season on one player? Like,
it's, you know what? They had a high pick because they suck, My favorite team's in that situation now. We're going to have a good, nice high draft pick next year. So you're drafting a guy because not only are you hoping the team plays better, but you want the community to have something to rally behind.
Yeah.
Like if this guy can be as good as he was here, as he was in college, then games are going to be fun here.
Yeah.
And they were right. So Wayne Fontes took over as head coach that same year, his rookie year, and he was known for being a great salesman.
Red flag.
So he sold that the Lions will be different now that they had Barry Sanders. So now you got a new coach, you got a new rookie running back, and it's like a new day in Detroit.
Yes. So the plan was to not let Barry play in his first game, or at least that's what he was told. Which, why would you not play the person you just drafted in the first game of the season? Like, I don't know what that was about.
He's a salesman.
Yeah. So the crowd was so eager to see Barry play. Like you said, we bought these season opener tickets. We want to see Barry Sanders. They started cheering like, Barry, like, let him play. So the coach finally puts him in, and Barry says his first touchdown for the Detroit Lions was actually as big of a surprise to him as it was to everybody else. Like, he didn't expect to do that. So he had a really great start as soon as they put him in, and it was off to the races. And so Barry said, I had to continue to go out and prove myself. So he was in the documentary himself. He's only in his 50s now. And he was like, I'm not just about to, rest on my laurels. Like, I really have to go out there and prove myself every day.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't paying attention to the popularity he was getting, which, red flag, I don't know.
That's not a red flag for me. We need more berries.
If you're the best football player, the running back in the league right now, don't you know that you're the best? He's like, oh, I didn't realize I was getting popular.
Yeah, but you know that you're the best, but if your sole purpose is to just be a dominant running back or dominant person in your position and at what you do, no matter what it is, whether it's the NFL or whatever. He just had the type of personality. He was a worker.
Yeah, that was it.
Blue collar, knees in the dirt, rolling up the sleeves, and he was just such a freak athlete.
Yeah.
I don't think it could be anything but God-given ability. So to me, I was I was kind of I thought it was cool as a kid watching him. Because, I grew up watching Chad Ochocinco, Terrell Owens, all these flashy dudes. And then it's you see this unstoppable force who just doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's just here to play.
It is pretty cool how chill he is.
Yeah.
And so, for example, his rookie season, he was in a position to get the season's rushing title. I'm over here. I don't know a lot about football, but I know that's important. So, what does that mean? You got the most yards?
The rushing title means, you got the most yards of the whole NFL. Most rushing yards. He
was in a position to...
That was big back then.
Yeah, and he only had 9 yards to go. But records didn't matter to Barry.
Red flag.
Yeah.
I'd have got my 9 yards.
He did not care about those 9 yards. He did not care about the record. He decided to sit out the rest of the last quarter and didn't push for the rushing record title.
Because they was up. So you know how sometimes you get up in the game, basketball, whatever, you rest your starters because you want to, be able to
Barry rest himself.
You don't want them to risk injury and, in the playoffs when you need them in the postseason. Barry said, nah, I'm good. I don't need the rushing title.
That's crazy. He was so humble.
That was my red flag because I would have got them 9 yards.
That was a red flag.
Rushing title rookie year? She.
But he said he was all about the team success and his performance. Like you said, work and good performance, quality performance. He said he let his play speak for itself. So by the fall of 1991, Barry said he felt like he finally made it in the division. Now, 2 years in, you really got your footing. And he said, I think back to that first playoff game. Man, it was electric. That's when he got his first playoff game against the Cowboys, and they won.
I love to see the Cowboys lose. I love
Me too, I'm sorry. But
I love to see them lose.
So they went on to play Washington in the NFC Championship that year and was really looking forward to the game. But they lost and they didn't get a taste to the Super Bowl. And we're going to see this is just a recurring thing season after season for Barry. That's what we learned in the documentary.
Sorry, Detroit fans. I know this is a rough subject
for you. Sorry to pick at the wound. But in the following years, 1992, 93, 94, 95, the Lions should have fared better in the playoffs, but didn't. And they never won a Super Bowl. So although this whole documentary was about Barry Sanders, I was like, wait a second, he never won a ring?
Red flag, man. It's just one of the greatest ever, man. I feel like most football legends would say if they wish one Hall of Famer could get a ring that never got it, Barry Sanders would probably be a lot of guys vote. I really wish Barry got a ring.
Yeah, I do too after watching this.
We know Barry don't care. He don't got it.
He literally doesn't care. This was just a job for him. And I think that's so crazy that people get paid to just play a sport and they have to put in the same work ethic as we do, 9 to 5, it's just in a different way. I'm not physically putting my body
on the line, man. Barry took some hits, but he also gave some out. Yeah.
I was wowed by his footwork. I'm like, I would have twisted my ankle doing that stuff.
His balance was unheard of.
Yeah.
Unheard of.
So don't get it twisted. Barry wasn't the problem. It's like if you see a player who's not, you don't got no rings though, you lose every year though, you must not be that great. Yeah. It wasn't him. He wasn't the problem. They just kept losing and, they had issues with people like Emmitt Smith, who was a competitive running back as well on the Cowboys. He was a competitor for Barry. So they were not competing with him because the Cowboys had that better coaching, that better organization.
That's when they went on that run in the 90s. But that shows you how much football is a team sport. It's really hard for one player to dictate a team's success in the NFL. It's a team sport, and the Cowboys just had the better team.
That's what I was asking earlier. They really hung their hopes on Barry, but he could only do so much.
Yeah.
And so they said in the documentary straight up, the Lions organization was incompetent and Barry could only do so much. So still Barry received many accolades over his 10 seasons, including NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year in 1989, NFL Offensive Player of the Year twice in 1994 and 1997,
Nice.
NFL Most Valuable Player in 1997, and many other Pro Bowl and whatever.
Man, what a time.
Yeah.
My favorite position in football, one of them definitely, I would say, is the running back position. And the NFL has changed so much. Like, it's so crazy that a running back was the MVP of the NFL. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
Like, I miss those times because the game is so much passing now. It's mostly like almost every season when people think of MVPs, they think of quarterbacks. And they did a lot back then too, but that just shows you how influential he was to not only the Lions, but football.
Yeah, the sport, the
Barry
NFL.
innovated the game for like backs to come up after him. Everybody wants to be like Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
So in 1997, Coach Fontes was fired because at this point we like, it ain't Barry, so who is it?
Yeah.
So now we got a clean house. Barry's play wasn't like what it was before, but the team picked it back up. So like he was still smashing records and finally got excited about a personal goal of eclipsing like 2,000 rush yards in one season. That is extremely hard.
I can't say red flag because he's finally excited about something.
Word. But 2,000 yards in one season, that's incredible. That season, Barry witnessed Reggie Brown's neck injury, which was like a scary moment because he like couldn't move on the field. Yeah. Our DeMar Hamlin situation, but maybe even worse, honestly.
Yeah. And another teammate, what was his name? Mike.
Oh, in 19 what?
Mike getting paralyzed.
Yeah. So he was paralyzed, had a serious spinal injury. And that kind of scared Barry. Running backs get hit every time they hit the ball. I'm
sorry, but that's one reason why I never got into football. Because men getting tackled, that scares me. I tense up with every injury I see. So for him to witness it live, I couldn't do that.
It was raw back then too. In the 90s, nobody cared about.
I actually asked you while watching the documentary, like the padding situation. You think they had more padding then than now?
I think they had more padding then, but the padding today is like safer, and I think more. It's just more technology behind keeping players out of harm's way. Yeah. But back then, I feel like pads were bulkier.
They did look kind of,
But it just wasn't a lot of knowledge and information about, concussion and brain safety back then. It wasn't as much of a conversation as it is now.
Yeah.
At least I can say. So in 1998, Barry's teammates started leaving the team and having success in other places in the NFL. Because, football is a hard sport. You're doing something close to, over 6-8 years. Closing in on a decade at this point. His guys are leaving. Guys that he had chemistry with since he was a rookie. And not only are they leaving, some of them are retiring, but others are getting put in other cities, playing for other teams, and it's starting to have success in the postseason, even becoming Super Bowl champions. So Barry's thinking about leaving at this point. The Lions team rebuild wasn't working, and the team just couldn't figure out how to win consistently. So their last game of the 1998 season was against the Ravens, and Barry says, "I remember walking off the field, and I knew that this journey was over."
You know.
Yeah, so it's funny because I think his dad actually convinced him to come back because he even thought about it before. I think they did mention that in the documentary. So in 1999, a few days before training camp, this is kind of funny. This goes back to the poll question. Barry decided to get away for a few days, so he goes to London. Because he's never been there before.
No, I think he'd been there once, and that's the only reason he went.
Oh, my fault. So he went once, and he liked it. So he went back to, just to catch a breath of fresh air. Excuse me. So once he settled in London, right, nobody knew he was going, but somebody found out, and media was waiting for him. Because it's like the day before camp. Everybody's like, where the hell is Barry Sanders?
Again, red flag. This is like when we go back to the first day he got drafted, always ducking people. I don't know what that was about.
So Barry sent word that he was retiring through fax. He faxed the Detroit Lions that, I'm retired.
That really shocked everybody. And I guess that's a red flag because, like the poll question, have you guys ever put in a 2-week letter or email? How you do it? By phone? He did it by fax.
So think about it. Barry's 31 years old, right? So
that's so young.
I'm 27. He's about 4 years older than me at this point. And obviously this was shocking to all of his friends and his family. He didn't tell his dad.
Yeah.
He didn't tell his dad because his dad, like I said, the year before had to talk him off the ledge.
Right.
So he wants like the world to know that he didn't leave because they were losing and that it wasn't about the Lions. It's just he knew that it was his time.
Yeah.
But like to this day, Detroit, the city of Detroit, I mean, they love him. You know what I'm saying? Like he has a statue, all of that. But they still wonder, like, there's still conspiracy. Like, why did Barry really leave like that? But I honestly think that he just knew that he just didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
He's the type of ball player that when he wakes up and he's not excited about going to, wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning for camp, you know what I'm saying, and away from your family or whatever. When you know. He was 31 years old, but he had probably been playing football since he was what? A kid?
Yeah.
So
I think he did say that he grew up, doing sports and always he was just one of those families like always did sports since he was a kid. So 31 years old. I was going to ask, is 10 seasons a long time in the NFL?
10 seasons is a very long time in the NFL, especially as a running back. The running back, a quick breakdown of football for our fans who may not know. The running back, especially in this time, was so important to football because they handled the ball a lot for an offense. And an offense's job is to score, to create yards, and explosive plays to give your team points enough to win. Mm-hmm. So Barry was that for the Lions, a team that didn't have a lot.
Yeah.
So it's like you go to work and you have, your job has all of this money, all this access to other athletes. You're competing against companies who, expense millions of dollars to attain these, special guys to be a part of your team. But Detroit just isn't doing it for Barry. And they're just saying, you know what, Barry, we're just going to keep trusting you that you'll get it done. But he did that for 10 years.
Yeah, and in the documentary, he was talking to his sons, and they're like, why didn't you just play somewhere else? And he was like, nah, I didn't even think about that. Like, I think he was just done with it altogether.
Because he knew, like, if he wanted to play somewhere else, somebody would have been happy to have Barry Sanders on their team. But even the Cowboys. Because I've always said Emmitt Smith might have... I think he ended up passing Barry in the rushing yards, total rushing yards. He played longer, but we all know that Barry Sanders, his ability surpassed Emmitt Smith. I would say at least. I'm
not gonna say I know. You said we all know, but I don't know.
The football fans know. Like you put on who highlight tape if you want to be more entertained. I'm putting on Barry. Sorry. So he wants the world to know.
Yeah. So what was his records at the end?
His records, I think, he was about 1,400 yards short of breaking the NFL's all-time rushing record held by Walter Payton. Mm-hmm. But again, we know he don't really care about stuff like that. So he finished his career with 15,269 rushing yards. That's fourth for all time.
Wow.
The Lions retired Barry's number. His number was 20 in 2004, the same year that he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, first ballot.
Awesome. So, again, you got into the Pro Football Hall of Fame with no Super Bowl wins.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's impressive. Like I said, his work speaks for itself. Walking away at the height of your career takes guts, Barry says, but sorry if there's any hard feelings.
That's all he said. Again, he was so chill in the documentary. He was just like, I'm sorry if there was any hard feelings. Just left because I wanted to.
Yeah, and he still lives in Detroit today. Has 4 sons. I remember one of his sons was close to mine. I think he's like a couple years older than me, but
really?
He was really nice in football. I remember Barry Sanders Jr. I think he went to Stanford.
Oh, wow.
He might have been there like around the same time.
Yeah, if you have 4 sons, one of them got to play football. They didn't really talk about any love interest or wife or how he got his kids in the documentary, but they did have him go back to London at the end of the documentary and sit down with his sons and tell them the story. So that was really cool to see. They all look like him. He has such a distinct, sharp face, like a jaw, like Crimson Gin, like... So it was really cool to learn about Barry Sanders. And who's your Watchy Award for?
My Watchy Award goes to the fax machine.
The infamous fax.
The fax machine.
So 90s.
Imagine like what building he went to, like whether it was what they used to call him back in the
Kinko's.
day. Kinko's. Imagine you working at a Kinko's in fucking London, and Barry Sanders walks in and faxes his freaking retirement. His retirement.
And I wonder what it said. Just the end
of this amazing one in a lifetime career. He faxes it over to the Detroit Lions. So that's where my Watchy goes to.
My Watchy Award has to go to the Heisman situation. Just learning about the fact that, number one, he didn't really give a shit.
Yeah.
And he said that he was over in Japan playing a game with Oklahoma State because they didn't think they had any Heisman prospects on their team. Like, Barry was so, under the radar. The other two guys, like you said, were the flashy quarterback or whatever. Everybody knew their name, but they didn't think that they had a winner on their team. So they went and played a game. And so they literally showed him like falling asleep on the camera. And when he won, he was like, okay, now I can go back to bed. So it definitely has to go to the Heisman, because if there's one thing I've learned, and maybe that's another documentary we could do, OJ. I learned from that documentary, like, the importance of the Heisman.
Well, doing OJ is like us doing a sports doc and a true crime doc at the same time.
Keep an eye out, Watchworthy folks. So remember to take the poll. Have you ever left a job without giving 2 weeks notice like Barry? Like we said, that was days before training camp. They was like, where he at? That was so hilarious, so petty.
I've definitely done that before.
Oh my gosh.
I was in college.
Exactly. This guy was 31 years old.
It was Burger King, man. Like, fuck Burger King.
And he just said, I'm not going to say he said F the Lions, but he just said, I'm done with this job.
Yeah. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah. So take that poll wherever you're watching. Comment, like, subscribe. Please share if you like this podcast. And remember, you can follow us on TikTok. The TikTok is watch.worthypod, and on Instagram at watchworthypod. And that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. See y'all next week.
Peace.
Peace.